David Starkey is, if nothing else, a man who knows how to make a headline, and in his latest interview with the Daily Telegraph, he plays the role he's perfected over decades, a sharp, acerbic and occasionally unhinged cultural Cassandra, warning of Britain's descent into chaos. But while his diagnosis of decline has merit, his reasoning is fundamentally flawed, built on a foundation of historical nostalgia, logical fallacies, and ideological grievance. So I want to go through Starkey's claims, showing where he's correct about Britain's problems, but also wrong in the interpretation of their causes. Britain is in decline. Yes, but why? And Starkey's core claim is that Britain is fading into irrelevance, and here he is not entirely wrong. The UK faces severe challenges: economic stagnation following Brexit, years of underinvestment and an over-reliance on financial services, political dysfunction, with both major parties trapped in a managerialism and bereft of big ideas, obsessed with selecting leaders who are not going to rock the boat, cultural fragmentation with growing divisions over identity, history, and national purpose. But rather than engage with these material realities, Starkey takes a cultural war detour. Instead of discussing austerity, global shifts, or structural economic weaknesses, he fixates on wokeness, the monarchy, and Elon Musk. It's not a serious analysis, it's reactionary theatre, and Starkey is capable of significantly more grit, and he goes for an easy option and for tittle-tattle headlines. It's a silly interview, and he's pursuing a silly agendum. I'd love to have a proper chat with him. It's been a long time, and I think he's becoming a bit of a plonker. One of Starkey's most bizarre claims is that King Charles III is woke and that Prince William is hopeless. The monarchy, he argues, has been neutered by progressive values and has abandoned its historic role in defining British identity. But what does woke even mean in this context? I've had many people tell me what woke is and what woke isn't, and in the end I have no idea. Woke means whatever you want it to mean. Charles's environmentalism, it's hardly a radical position. Prince Philip was warning about overpopulation decades ago. William's supposed lack of leadership: the monarch has always been reactive, not proactive. The role is ceremonial, not political. And to claim that the Queen sucked up to African dictators is an oversimplification of her diplomatic role in holding the Commonwealth together. The monarchy isn't declining because of wokeness. It's declining because its relevance in a modern democracy is inherently fragile. It's not made any better by having silly people like Starkey wittering away in the background. Starkey's further claims that Britain became freer in the 1960s only for that freedom to be stolen by the Race Relations Act is simply the wittering of a pedant and a fool. Yes, Britain certainly became freer in the 1960s, but the Race Relations Act was a positive, not a negative. This is classic post hoc fallacy. Just because two things happened in sequence doesn't mean one thing caused the other. The Race Relations Act of 1965 didn't suppress free speech. I was doing a most interesting lesson this evening about free speech. Free speech is much bigger than a series of prohibitions. Speech is something that articulates our consciousness, and the fact that there was a law that outlawed racial discrimination in housing, employment, and public services. Even then, it didn't do so very effectively. To equate this with censorship is historically illiterate, and Starkey confuses freedom of expression with the right to discriminate. This is part of a broader conspiratorial framing that Britain's decline is due to an elite-engineered multiculturalism rather than economic and geopolitical shifts. He calls devolution a disaster, suggesting it's led to Britain's decline. But this ignores economic and political realities. Devolution was a response to existing grievances that haven't been answered. It's not their cause. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have long-standing demands for autonomy. Ignoring them would have caused even greater instability. Devolution was an attempt towards addressing that issue. It hasn't gone far enough. And Britain's decline is not due to devolution, but due to economic mismanagement. It's due to the imperious centralisation of power in Westminster. Brexit has certainly triggered more problems. It certainly made the problem worse. And weak governance by a series of stupid prime ministers and stupid governments hasn't helped. But the false equivalence, another logical fallacy, is in thinking that devolution is the cause. Regional autonomy is not synonymous with national decline. As I say, Starkey, grow up. He romanticizes the past. We all like that. It's a good thing. Claiming that Britain once operated as a pure meritocracy where doors simply opened to talent. Well, that's not true. It's historically selective nonsense. Starkey himself benefited from post-war social mobility policies, including grammar schools and university expansion, both of which have now been dismantled largely. And I regret that. I regret it deeply. The 1950s and 1960s were not a utopia. Class barriers, nepotism, racial exclusion were rampant. Social mobility has declined in recent decades, but not because of wokeness, but because of rising inequality, housing crises, and an education system skewed towards exams, skewed towards the absurdity of a bit of paper, and failing to draw on academic rigour. The real tragedy is that Starkey, as someone who overcame class barriers, should know better than to push this fantasy. And perhaps the most unintentionally comedic part of the interview is Starkey's fawning adoration of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Musk is described as a genuine liberator, despite his authoritarian handling of Twitter, mass censorship of critics, and erratic decision-making, and Trump is seen as part of the fight back against the woke elite, despite his own assaults on free speech, banning journalists, calling for state control of media, and encouraging violence. This is where Starkey completely loses the plot. He loses credibility. He decries censorship, but idolizes authoritarians who practice it. His argument collapses under its own contradictions. Starkey's most hyperbolic claim is that Britain is experiencing a fall of Rome-style collapse and requires a restoration akin to 1660. Look. Fall of Rome over here. Restoration 1660 over here. Long period in between. It reduces serious political challenges to a cultural melodrama and a historical mismatch. Britain isn't collapsing because of wokeness. It's struggling because of Brexit-induced trade issues, because of Liz Truss stupidity, because of underinvestment, because of political stagnation, because people like Starkey, who should be out there helping, are wittering in the background. The IMF bailout scenario he predicts, it wouldn't be due to race relations laws or devolution, but financial mismanagement and the lack of industrial strategy. Instead of engaging with concrete issues, Starkey spins a theatrical narrative of moral decline, missing the real story of economic and political decay. David Starkey is right about one thing: Britain is in trouble. But his obsession with wokeness, race and nostalgia blinds him to the real cause of the decline. Economic failure, the underfunded, low productivity Brexit disrupting Britain. Political weakness, a succession of uninspiring, stupid leaders. Institutional erosion from the NHS to the civil service, key bodies are under strain. And rather than grappling with these material realities, Starkey offers a vaudeville, a music hall routine of anti-woke grievance, misidentifying symptoms as causes. It's the job of good academics to lead and to call out problems rather than to present conspiracy theories that sort of rally the right. I don't mind the right having tame academics. It's great. But they should actually do their job before they open their mouth. They should actually be doing something and saying something which is coherent, rather than this nonsense. The other day I was calling out the logical fallacies of J.D. Vance. Now I'm doing the same thing for David Starkey. Come on. You know, we can forgive a politician for not making sense. We can't really forgive a senior academic whose career is predicated on his on his university career. We can't allow this sort of nonsense to be peddled as serious as a serious contribution. It's not. This is this is sixth form politics. This is madness masquerading as sense. Britain needs a real intellectual revival. It's not going to get one from David Starkey, is it? It won't come from a man stuck in a perpetual culture war, longing for a past that never really existed. I think David Starkey's time is gone.